One of the best known and arguably successful marketing drives this year has been the Down, Down, Prices Are Down campaign at Coles. It's led to squeals first from the dairy industry and then the beer industry. Today it's got Australian businessman at large and activist Dick Smith, who has accused Coles of a new form of extreme capitalism at the expense of the farmer. Dick Smith joins me now. Dick, welcome to the programme.
Hi.
Now, you warned that you'd name and shame a little while ago those getting too rich on the back of ordinary folk. And today you've decided that the Sheriff of Nottingham, if I can put it, is Coles' CEO Ian McLeod. Why?
Well, $15.6 million a year to me is outrageous, especially when Australian processors and Australian farmers are closing down, going broke, country towns are closing. It's just not fair. It's not a fair go.
He says that, he would say, I'm sure, that shareholders have done very well, and indeed that his sales are up.
Absolutely, but this is ruthless capitalism. In the Australian this morning, something was exposed that's not generally talked about. A sister company of Coles, Target, had gone to all of its suppliers and said, oh, look, all the contracts we've had, we're going to pay you 5% less. Now, that is outrageous. And I've heard of this in the food industry, but everyone says to me, oh, Dick, don't mention it, don't mention it.
But I think also in that article, Target was arguing that the deals had changed, or the conditions had changed since the orders were first made several months ago. The Aussie dollar's higher, commodities are higher.
I mean, it's just unethical. You don't have a contract with someone and then say, oh, by the way, we're going to pay you 5% less. And what wasn't covered in the article, if you're one of these companies and you say, well, no, we can't afford to do that, you're told, well, we will not buy your product next year. We will can all of your products. Let me tell you this, these people are thugs in these major supermarkets.
Do you know these suppliers? I mean, is that really
Absolutely.
what they're saying?
One of my suppliers for Dick Smith Foods, they're so terrified that I might mention what's happened to them, because they said they were told that the prices had to come down. And I said, well, we should mention this. It's impossible if you've got an agreement. And they said, oh, Dick, if you mention it, they won't buy anything from us.
And are these, are you obviously not going to say who they are, but are they a reasonable size supplier?
Absolutely, a very substantial company. They are terrified to tell the truth. And it was interesting, it was exposed in the Australian this morning. This is straight thuggery. Understand, you've got an agreed price, and so the organisation Target gets in touch with you and says, oh, by the way, we're going to pay you 5% less. That's it. We've decided we're paying you less than the contract price. Imagine if they said that to the staff, oh, we decided to pay you 5% less. You can't do that. It's not illegal. They get away with it because then they say, well, we'll pay you this time, but we'll delete your product. So you're forced.
You've just bailed out a beetroot farmer. He bought his entire crop for, I think, about $80,000, and will have that canned. But what led to that was the international company Aldi dropping its prices. And that wasn't a Woolworths or Coles issue, was it?
Absolutely. Look, one of the unintended consequences of having Aldi here, and I thought, isn't it wonderful? But they have very low overheads. They have 4 staff in each room. They're not a public company here. It's private, so they save money. They can discount. Now, for Coles and Woolworths to match, which they'll always do, to match the price, they need to get actually lower. So what it in effect means is that Coles and Woolworths import everything, so the Australian farmer goes out of business.
So I guess what I'm saying is that it's complicated, because that was triggered by an international player.
It's all triggered by this extreme capitalism. Look, we've got an economic system which is built on perpetual growth. That's impossible. You can't have perpetual growth all the time. It's hitting the boundaries now, so people are doing unethical things, and they're bullying people, and the small operator, the small processor, even the big ones. Heinz have just given up in Australia, sacked all their workers, and they've moved to New Zealand to save 20%.
Do you think naming and shaming the big supermarkets will make any difference? I mean, I know we try and buy coffee that's not got child labour involved with it, but I mean, they're not actually going to buy a marketing campaign which is be kind to farmers, are they?
What has to be communicated to the Australian public, that if you go down this track, first of all, what have Coles saved us? They've saved us 1.7 cents in the dollar. It's virtually nothing. What is the economic cost? Our taxes will go up because we're going to end up paying social services for our farmers and our processors, the people who worked in the country towns who have lost their jobs. It's extreme capitalism. It's dangerous. It's going to wreck our way of life. We used to have a fantastic form of capitalism where you gave people a fair go. Yeah. You said everyone's got to make $1. These days, these retailers, and especially Coles, say, we don't care if you make $1 as long as we maximise the return for our shareholders.
You've made it quite personal. You've talked about Ian McLeod and his $15 million package.
Yep.
You're right about the paucity of Australian philanthropy here, but you're calling on him to actually give away some of his money. I mean, it's quite possible that he might might be a major anonymous donor in the cancer area or something, isn't it? I mean, but everybody doesn't do that sort of thing publicly.
I was taught by my parents that if you're well off, if you're wealthy, you have an obligation. Now, you don't fulfil obligations secretly. I've been to these major charities and said, do you get any substantive amounts anonymously? They say never. Most of the wealthy here, there are a few very generous people like the Lowy family, people like the Fox family, but most of our wealthy these days are incredibly selfish. And that's a real disappointment to me, because you bring capitalism into, you discredit it and it will be destroyed.
There are a few of you around now, what I'd call business provocateurs. There's Jeff Cousins, there's Jan Cameron even. Yep. Do you see a growing number of you doing this sort of thing? I mean, there's 2 or 3, 4 of you now.
Well, no, not really, but I think I like to say it how it is. Now,
I'm waiting for one of you to appear, by the way, in the coal seam gas industry.
Not yet, but people have said to me, Dick, well, Coles and Woolworths not going to buy from you. Luckily, I've done a deal with Flight Centre and with Dymocks to buy my food. So if I get dumped, because the threat from Coles and Woolworths to these suppliers is, if you expose our thuggery, we won't buy from you. Well, I'm exposing it. It's not on. I was going to say it's not Australian, but it's obviously become Australian. This type of thuggery where you do a deal and then they get back in touch and say, oh, we're going to deduct 5% from the price we had, and bad luck.
Dick Smith, we'll ask them to come back and give us their side of the story, but thank you very much for putting yours today.
Thank you.